Good morning to you, my friends, wherever you may be in the world today. Alan Clements here from Hawaii. Today, November 14th, 2021, this is part 5 in my series, Reflections on the Dharma Life, 50 years of adventure, blind spots, the crevasses of false certainty, and the beauty of being. So, from my heart to yours, I hope you're having a beautiful day. Today's talk, perspective, perspectives, in essence. And then the words consciousness, meditation, psychedelics, mind manifesting substances, and language. Those dimensions or those domains have been, I want to say, pivotal, profoundly pivotal in my overall Dharma life, Dhamma life. And I want to share a few thoughts about these 4 dimensions and the vision of perspective or perspectives. Some weeks back, I shared a sutta of the Buddha, attributed to the Buddha, a simile, called the parable of the blind men, who apparently, as the sutta is shared, the Buddha told a group of nuns and monks about a king in previous time in India who had called 6 blind men together whom had been blind their whole life and brought an elephant into the area and asked each of the blind men to touch the elephant. And it said that one of the blind men touched the tusk, another touched the trunk and the foot and the tail and the tuft and the ear. And as you may anticipate, each of these men, it could have been me, it could have been you, could have been us, touching aspects of the whole, the elephant, responded in integrity and said, well, the elephant is like a post. He's got his hand on his feet. Another who had his hand on the elephant's ear said the elephant is like a rug. And the man who had his hand on the tuft of the elephant's tail said the elephant is like a brush, and so on. We get the picture. A limited picture. An honest, dignified thought experiment that ripples through time and space today across the landscape of my own conscience and critical thinking, and hopefully yours as well. And the lesson that could be learned and gleaned from this ancient parable of the blind men is what? The integrity of false certainty, the prioritization of one viewpoint and the denial of another. Oh no, it can't be a tuft and like a brush. It's the elephant is a rug. Can't you feel it? Can't you see it? Can't you know it from direct experience? And how easy it is, as the Buddha was said to have said in this ancient discourse that sonically vibrates, at least today in my heart, that these nuns and monks began to accuse each other based upon the latent, unrecognized kilesa, or the obscurations within the filter of consciousness the obscuration of denial, of arrogance, of pride, of fear, of anger, of judgment, of blame, and of ignorance. And so through these filters, perspectives are distorted based upon the function of the SOM, the state of mind, the Cetasika. And when these Cetasikas act in consortium, we have a sankhara, a collection of states that then deliver on the moment a perspective that is uniquely conditioned by the characteristics of the Cetasikas, or the states of mind, within that consortium of sankharas. And we have the world as we know it, the elephant in the room that can't be seen in reality because of the limits of consciousness identified with the delusion, and we attribute what we feel to be direct experience. This is the truth, and we fail to understand larger perspectives. Fair enough. And this begs the desire of the heart on how to expand one's own perspective to include more and more of reality. Okay, point one. I've been reading, I've posted some pictures of the book cover. I've been reading the, what is his role? Is he a quantum physicist? Is he a co-founder or discoverer of superstring theory? An astrophysicist, I'm not sure, but Michio Kaku. His latest book that was recently released called The God Equation. It's the only book that I've read in recent time, except when I was in college and high school, that even though I read it 2 or 3 times, repeated paragraph, I still don't know what I'm reading. So my words will reflect exactly what I just said. It's the obscuration of a perspective about the elephant. And so I changed from reading the book alone to watching a number of his more recent videoed interviews in lectures and talks to supplement and expand my elephant in the room simile to gain more of a, I would call it a whole picture of what he is trying to communicate as the evidence of totality, the integration of all theories into one cohesive equation that, for those who have the ability to see all the dimensions of the elephant, according to Mr. Kaku, have a symmetry that quantum theory and relativity and superstring and parallel universes and parallel whatevers all make intimate logical sense from the, I guess this is the physicist point of view. And I've been finding over the decades physics and Abhidhamma, the Buddhist Pali word for what would be, it's traditionally called Buddhist psychology, but it's so much more than psychology, because it also deals with the substratum and the molecular level of the most minute elements of vijnana or consciousness on the continuum level. And what little I can understand from my years of reading, I won't use the word studying physics, this molecular level, the photonic level, the atomic level, the nuclear level, the neutrinos, the electron, all those little particles that they refer to as these invisible forms of energy that make you and me, as we sit and move and walk on this sphere, circling a sun star based upon, I even dare use the word anymore, gravity. and the curvature of space and light and frequencies and the speed of light and all the ways to examine, analyze the elephant call totality, the elephant called the cosmos, the elephant called by Mr. Kaku superstring, the 11, I want to use the word discernible, but 11 hypothesized dimensions of existence that intersect, that live in some form of continuum in the simultaneity of who we are right now in this world that we see ourselves breathing, walking, talking, and obviously dying. And when you, or I should say me, to be very honest, when I couple this ongoing research with consciousness, with meditation, with my continued conscious dosing of psychedelics, which I find interesting as a way to complement, I want to use the word here, the beauty of meditation, which isn't just simply a singular cross-legged posture. To me, I've done all that I can, and I encourage everyone in their lives to expand the meaning of consciousness, to expand the meaning of meditation, to expand the meaning of asana, to expand the meaning of the psychedelic, and to truly expand the breadth and the meaning, the syntax, the definition, the frequency of language. And those dimensions, to me, are those not just portals, but playstations, vocations, the kind of psychic astrophysics of being to explore space and matter and energy and vibration and particles and waves and frequencies, called the makeup of the invisibility of consciousness and form, time and space and energy. And point 3 coming up. Mr. Kaku, in the lecture that I listened to last night, and I've heard it before from him, he has this very direct way of saying a very explicit fact. He said, it's a law of physics, if I can get this right, it's a law of physics that one day the earth will be destroyed. He doesn't use the word extinction, the 6th great extinction particularly, the 5 prior to the one we're in. He's a far-reaching savant, a type of post-Einsteinian a post-Stephen Hawking, true kind of Galileo of consciousness, a Newtonian, Kakuan, Buddha type mind that's willing to really use the pragmatism of science with the far-reaching breadth of consciousness. And I want to add here, I really wish, it's my desire, that he had some familiarity with Abhidhamma and the language, not so much of Buddhism, but the language that's so specific, I know of science from a layman's point of view, so specific to pointing to the chaitasikas of consciousness, the states of mind, the SOMs as I refer to them, or the SOC, states of consciousness, the 52 chaitasikas within the galaxy of vijnana, or the invisibility of consciousness, and the characteristics of how these chaitasikas influence the cosmos of consciousness. Yet from his point of view, I didn't realize, but he seems to be a real the astronaut, if you will, almost NASA central for the transhumanist Elon Musk artificial intelligence domain. He's clearly adept in what he refers to, and a lot of his colleagues, as a civilization one world, a civilization two world, and a civilization of three world. We're not even, the commentator and the interviewer asked him, where are we on Earth today? And he said, we're not even at a civilization one. We still burn and use trees and oil and fossil fuels. We don't even, use light and minerals and air to sustain the radiance of a global perspective without the self-annihilating behavior of burning that which is toxic to the earth and to the lung through overheating. But he's not a pessimist, and he's not really an optimist, but an astrophysical pragmatist, if you will. Like the Buddha was a real pragmatist, what little I understand of the Buddha's teachings. But at the same time, he had that Kakuin, Stephen Hawking, psychedelic. This is what I love about the Buddhism out of Burma, which is so, for many people, just to pause here, so many people think of Buddhism and meditation as like, let's be mindful. When it's like the richness from just, and I don't even know the languages of the Burmese language or the Pali language, just really an adolescent level. As a white Westerner coming to a foreign country, I was blessed to be able and supported to be a monk for a short period of time, a very short period of time, just a few years, within the system of true cognitive scientists, meta scientists of consciousness, that really extraordinary exploration of the inner physics of how to travel beyond form, travel beyond time, travel beyond A and B and distance, the simultaneity of I want to use the word consciousness beyond form. And you get the feeling like with Kaku, if you follow me here, is that he's trying his very best, understanding this very uncompromising fact he puts out to large audiences, to the world. It's a law of physics that one day the earth, where we are, will be destroyed. And he, quoting him, or close to quoting him from my research last night, he was talking to the audience that 10 to 15,000 years ago, that we were in an ice age, and that the very place that we are, he was saying to the audience of several thousand, was covered by 100 feet of ice. I'm here on the edge of a semi-dormant, you might as well say a temporarily inactive, active volcano here on this microdot in the Pacific, and everything that we sit on and build our homes on and walk and drive on, and Whole Foods and all the various things that happen here, even all the yoga classes, the tantra classes, the psychedelic classes, they're all kind of just an ear or a tongue or a tuft or a foot of the elephant. And if we're not careful, we miss the reality that we're on not just a volcano, but an earth that's alive with nuclear fusion and heat that will erupt and just simply create a non-memory of my life and all the estates on this island and have a new chain that's called something different than Hawaii. And we will not even have a clue. And he's talking about this ice age. And then from a point of view of an asteroid, of the dinosaurs, just and they're gone. And then he goes on to say that several 100 million years and the outset, the furthest out that you can go, 5 billion years, that the very sun that tans our bodies and allows us D3 to ward off COVID and keeps us at this very sublime temperature of near perfection, that if it were only just a little higher or a little colder, the little bandwidth of human acceptability, we would freeze or we would burn and disintegrate like sizzle on a grill. That the earth will be engulfed by 96 million miles of fire flames from the nuclear powered solar star called our sun, and there will be no earth. So from his perspective, which is a very Buddha-esque perspective, it's a very meditative perspective, it's a very psychedelic perspective, it's a very language-oriented expansion of simple, naive concepts like being in the now. Why is the now only here? Why is it a micro moment? Isn't that putting our hand on the elephant's tail and saying, the elephant is a brush? The now is just me looking into your eyes. When in fact, from a Kakuin superstring quantum perspective, the now is 5 billion years to the 10,000th power. Swaths of eternity so large and so small that from the human brain generated perspective, it's quantum theory. And so the issue of perspective is what I'm trying to get to today. Is so utterly discombobulating and fascinating. And this is why I bring up the key portals for me of consciousness and meditation and psychedelics and language, because they, based upon my ethical, spiritual intelligence and courage, those portals expand based upon my ability to listen to my neighbor saying, oh, my experience of the elephant is that it's like a rod. I've got my hand on the tusk. Well, mine is on the ear and it's like a rug. And you're not wrong and I'm not wrong. Right there, right? So that points to me to what Kaku talks about is the necessities, the cognitive building blocks to truly embody a civilization one Earth, where we learn the power of what's the word? Experimental verification through the unity of differences and dialogue and empiricism. All the things that I learned, I want to say in college, but I quit because I was listening to my inner universe, and it brought me to the University of Burma, the Nassau Sentra, one of the great esoteric, pragmatic countries that kept alive and are trying to keep alive against all constraints and odds under dictatorship and tyranny, the astrophysics of consciousness. with the added element of what leads to unity, what leads to peace, what leads to harmony, what leads to mutual freedom. That's when I really was sitting this morning in my meditation thinking about my beloved sisters and brothers in Burma, both the activists and the revolutionaries as well as the Sangha. They in their own unique, brilliant, courageous way have kept alive, at least in the temperament of my own desire system, these timeless qualities of exploration of consciousness, the livelihood of discovering the attributes of consciousness that lead to harmony, peace, mutual freedom, and mystical adventure. That's what I loved about Mr. Kaku, listening to him and reading his book, The God Equation. It's not just trying to memorize information, but imbue myself in the spirit of this gentleman's heart, soul, laser beam of cognitive light, in my language. But coming back halfway through this talk to, based upon physics, that one day the earth will be destroyed. One could easily say that's a long time from now. But then when you put in the variables of an asteroid it is circling around the dark side of the sun and we don't see it, and it's small and it's jettisoned, and all of a sudden we have, through our microscopic illumination scopes, we are in the direct aim of this asteroid that's going to take life out on this planet. A ticking bomb that's so much different than climate collapse or nuclear radiation or the insanity of a nuclear war and a nuclear winter, where I hear that China is determined to quadruple its nuclear warheads by 2030. Now, how insane is that? The insanity of the insanity, pure insanity. And so, if physics and nature and the sun doesn't engulf us, human ignorance and narcissism, through the blind struggle to understand physics and mechanics and energy, and will kill us. And so I'm thinking, like, wow. Where is their safety? Where is their refuge? What now? What will you do with the preciousness of your day, of your own full breath, while you're still able to walk and move? And I don't particularly have a real need to acquire the pleasures of the senses, although I honor, in my own humble attempt, to live in simplicity and gratitude. But equally, when I read Kaku and watch Kaku, and I read the discourses of my teacher, the late Venerable Mahasi Sayadaw, primarily the only Dhamma books that I read are the books attributed to the Buddha and Mahasi Sayadaw. And why? Because it's not about being mindful alone. It's about the skillful embodiment of the dream. That's what I love about Mr. Kaku. It's that he's employing as much of himself as I project into him, the adventure of an expanded perspective without the fear of from his perspective, the absolute certainty of global death. Cosmological death. He even talks about the simultaneity of extinctions at this very moment. In the discernible cosmos, entire regions of our galaxies are right now colliding, and what life is there. And he said there's life everywhere. There are planets around every star. That this arising and passing of the phenomenology of existence, quantum physics and superstring and Abhidhamma and whatever the fabric of consciousness is, and whatever the deeper molecules of the psychedelic are that illuminate, as mindfulness does with good effort and concentration, the psychedelic of meditation and the psychedelic of the psychedelic and the psychedelic of mystical adventure within consciousness based upon the employment of states of mind called mystical sankharas that wish to explore the elephant in the cosmos without the need to judge and blame and criticize another perspective as inherently wrong, and it may be wrong, but the unity of differences as we develop into a civilization one, so that out of empathy and compassion, life lives on. Yeah. And he talks about life lives on. Over the years, I was reflecting, I've gotten into this phrase, the existential rebellion, and that I want to develop that higher order warriorship that is both defiant of the physics that I'm embedded in, conscious, and equally attuned to the symmetry of the highest order harmony and freedom that I could imagine and feel through the filter of my own understanding called insight and wisdom. Yes, I aspire to the ideal of the third noble truth attributed to the Buddha of Nibbana, both on a now-time phenomenological level, as well as a more stationary, unconditioned liberation from the conditions that give rise to anicca, anatta, and suffering, dukkha. That there is a sacred oasis free of the tear, of the blood, of the pain, of the despair, of the delusion of myopia, of touching consciousness as I would the elephant. Bringing it back to the simile of the elephant. Myopia. And that's what led me to Burma in meditation, was that the teacher said, if you sit and release myopia, fixation on identity based upon habit and conditioning, you will begin to open the lens of inner beingness that begins to see more clearly the nature of reality, the physics of interiority, and at the sense doors of perception. You begin to see the nature of constriction and narrowness, delusion, pride, judgment. You'll understand the physics of these chaitasikas, these SOMs, or these SOC, states of consciousness. And there you will become more literate of the functions, the characteristics, the manifestations, the waves, the particles, my language, the waves and particles. But Abhidhamma speaks in those terms of the frequencies that are the nature of the invisibility of inner being. And you become conversant, although you have your eyes wide open as a human being, you could be completely blind to the nature or the physics or the reality of vijnana or consciousness, or the attributes of consciousness, the 52 chaitasikas, the states of consciousness, the states of mind, and of the true nature of being a human, the skandhas, the 5 aggregates of being: consciousness, feeling, perception, sankharas, states of mind. And is it perception itself? And wow, that's the elephant within consciousness. And we have our hand on ideation, and we call it an event that you're harming me, which has its relative truth, but it's less than a civilization 1 state of Dhamma. And it's bound by the wheel of conditions of aging and death. And the Buddha talked about enlightenment being the deathless. And this is where Michio Kaku became very interesting. He's very interesting, but very, very interesting. When he talked about best case scenario would be for the transhumanist, this is how I've looked at it, and the convergence of the advanced artificial intelligence, and I dare even use the Muskian, Elon Muskian, Google-oriented microchip in the head brain to begin to download memory and consciousness and language to something larger than the Encyclopedia Britannica about your identity, and all of a sudden we have a downloaded consciousness where it's then digitalized and projected on a laser beam at the speed of light, and it goes to the moon, and it goes to Mars, and it goes to the outer fringes of the galaxy, and it takes 4 years, it's said, to go to the nearest mega constellation. Is it Alpha Centauri, where there is unlimited dimensions of life, and we know now through the factual documentation, through high technology and radars and human sight and corroboration, that the unidentified flying aeronautics, or the objects, the UFO, the UFAs, are now verifiable realities that even our Pentagon and the military and Mr. Kaku talks about as defying any of the physics that we could embody as humans without killing and crushing us simultaneously. So I'm not saying that there are organic life forms within the UFO phenomena, he's saying, but clearly they exist. They've been documented. We have the films, something like 122 films of them that have been microscopically looked at by the scientists and the intelligences that documented them and analyzed them. And yes, we live in a world teeming with life. And for us to graduate from civilization 1 to a civilization 3, where our near-term vicinity is just about everywhere because we've mastered how to digitalize consciousness and identity in the robotics of artificial intelligence and can beam it through time and space at speeds at least as fast as light, and then self-replicate these anatomic robotic circumstances where they just begin to expand and travel in further and further out to embed, to create, listen, learn from other life forms and itself. And we're occupying the galaxies, as Mr. Kaku talks about. Yes, we need to do that because based upon basic physics, the earth that we're on will be destroyed. And our duty, as this is what I'm saying, our duties in the spirit of the Bodhisattva spirit is to protect, enhance, and take refuge, not just in life, but in the refinement of consciousness. And I don't mean just refinement through nuance, the telescopic perception of consciousness upon consciousness. But for me, the trust in safety, the trust in security, the trust in the refuge of decency. Each of us who've been ill and sick live on the goodwill and the empathy and the kindness and generosity of another. In a way, we're all in hospice, it's been said. And the empowerment of other as angel for the service of I, and I in the service of other. We're in an angelic dimension if we so embody the reality of living in the preciousness of the vocation of the entity, of consciousness and psychedelics and meditation and language, to explore and inhabit, co-create new forms of wealth beyond fiat and beyond crypto and beyond exchange, where generosity is the radiance of shared life. There is no separation of I and other and belonging. There is no stealing and theft. There is no burning. There is no fire that consumes. We live in the radiance of peace and security. I do believe in that form of enlightened expansion. And that what gives me hope as a being born into mortality and the cul-de-sac and the conformity of ordinary. It freaks me out to live in the suburbs of predictability. That's why I'm kind of rabble and rebel and maverick and maverickian in all the ways to break out of the obedience of expectation, even though it be a good expectation, being in a monastery to practice meditation. I don't want to be told what to do because it's my conditioning. I want to expand. I want to be free. I want to dance. I want to make love. I want to electrify and eroticize totality. What is your raison d'etre? Mr. Kaku is inviting us explicitly through his own adventure, the Buddha through his own adventure. What is your raison d'etre? Dream large, woman. Dream out of the confines of your struggling relationship. Dream high in the radiance of your desire. Expand your sexuality to be so sapio, existentially alive in the transformational orgasm of freedom. Where's your poetry? And so I'm listening to Kaku through my own filters of the psychedelic, of meditation, of consciousness, and I'm coming to the end here. To dream and to adventure and to inhabit new dimensions of one's, I dare digress here, include new dimensions of one's elephant, one's God. Expand our Dhamma, the elephant of the Dhamma, the cosmos, the elephant of totality. Let us cease this preoccupation, this conditioned, lower than civilization one dialectic of tyranny, of domination, of rape, of genocide, of ethnic cleansing, of war, of murder, of deception, of lies. The earth will be nothing but one big central bank without any human being or any tree or animal to use all of the wealth accumulated through greed. How stupid is that? That's like someone grabbing the elephant's anus and putting its head in it and saying, it smells like me. It's more honest. Or you could see yourself coming out of its butt and saying, I'm nothing but a turd. That would be a very appropriate thing for Anthony Fauci to say at this point, with his demand on unaccountability and lying. We've all done it, yeah? But who wants to take down the ship based upon one's arrogance? And isn't that the strangeness of power? And so Mr. Kaku, in his God Equation book and his spectacular interviews and the teachings of the Buddha, and I stay in alignment with my own system, the late Venerable Mahasi Sayadaw, Seda Usujata, Seda Ujanaka, Seda Upandita, the entire Theravadan tradition out of Burma in the world, all throughout history, the Buddhas that have lived before the Buddha to be, it said, Maitreya, who I aspire to be in his Sangha or her Sangha. Every day I make a determination to be reborn in Tusita, to be in this Sangha with my samsaric Sangha members. I want to look into the eyes of a lover and say, how have we known each other through time immemorial? I want to be your star. I want you to be my star. And I want to be stars together in a galaxy of hope and freedom to take birth in the next Buddha Sasana. I want to see the abhinya, the magical display of consciousness, creating the multiplicity of unbelievable formations. This is where, Mr. Kaku, I would love to introduce you to the psychedelic, love to introduce you to meditation, love to introduce you to Abhidhamma. I'd love to introduce you to the concept of abhinya, super knowledges. Digitalizing consciousness is one type of oligarchian Silicon Valley, artificial intelligence, Muskian, Elon dimension, but there are those psychonauts within the system of Theravada and other systems as well that have employed the skill of the refined mystical chaitasikas, the sankharas, the orchestration of states of interiority that illuminate the field of consciousness with the control of consciousness to employ telepathy as ordinary, employ clairvoyance as the basic way of communication and understanding, to take disease out of dying, to take aging out of living, to prolong the death cycle from 50 years or 100 years to 10 million years, if not a type of what? A digitalized immortality? Is enlightenment immortality? Who are we? What is this elephant? What is this universe? What is this consciousness? These ancient systems of consciousness and meditation, the psychedelic and language, and the vocation of the mystical. May we discover our own civilization, three, inside and outside. May each of us aspire to the highest radiance of love, of compassion, of the attributes of good and true and beautiful. May we learn the high art of timeless lovemaking. May we cry and dedicate our existence, no matter how much we bleed in the anguish of unfulfilled visions and desires. No matter how much we judge and blame other for our own pain, no matter how much we crucify God as dark. Let us transform this satanic ritual called denial and fear and myopia that demands that the elephant be my terms and talk, relate, create. That's the word creation, is harmonious skill in differentiation to unify, as Mr. Kaku is desiring, quantum with superstring into a special superstring theory that unifies everything, called the God equation. That desire that we can say it out loud, I want to know the totality of this existence that I'm embedded in, that we're a space-time continuum where we can use language and learn language and share it across the frequency of totality right now. May it echo out. I want no harm, I only want peace. I want to understand the secret things about myself and this cosmos. Thank you, Mr. Kaku. Thank you, Lord Buddha. Thank you, all the women and men alive who've ever lived, who've aspired to greatness. Thank you for giving me the fire to dream from my heart to yours. Have a beautiful day. I hope there's something in this that illuminates your own wish, your own adventure, your own resilience to ward off myopia and narrowness and seek your own star on the horizon of your dream. From my heart to yours, thank you. God willing, see you tomorrow.